US-based global investment bank Morgan Stanley, in its latest report, hailed India's growth under PM Modi government since 2014. In its latest report, Morgan Stanley said that India is transformed in less than a decade and has gained positions in the global order. Now, CNN News 18's political editor Maria Shakil spoke exclusively to Morgan Stanley's MD, Ridham Desai. Let's listen in.
Your report says that Morgan Stanley ran into significant skepticism about India, particularly with overseas investors who say that India has not delivered its potential despite it being the second fastest growing economy. Why, according to you and your research, what did India do right in the last 9 years which it did not do earlier?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. So lots of things have happened, actually. I think, first of all, and this is a bit technical, India has focused on macro stability. So if I were to use purely from an economic perspective, I would characterize the Prime Minister as an inflation hawk, which essentially means that he doesn't want inflation. And this is very critical for prosperity of the economy. So in order to achieve that outcome, he actually changed the mandate for the central bank. So our Reserve Bank of India is now solely focused on delivering lower inflation outcomes. And the best result of this was seen during the pandemic. While the world at large was facing runaway inflation, countries like US, which normally have sub 2% inflation, experienced 9% inflation. India's inflation rise was very modest. So in part, this was to do with how the RBI's policy was framed, and in part it had to do with how the government actually protected poor people during the pandemic. So instead of doling out cash, which is what a lot of Western hemisphere economies did, India was actually giving food, and that's not inflationary. So that's the first big change. We call this macro stability. So its macro is far more stable. The second thing that has happened, I think, is how India does social transfers. And the seeds of this were sown when the Prime Minister decided that we have to accelerate Aadhaar and identify each and every Indian digitally. And India Stack and Aadhaar allows the government to actually make social transfers very efficiently without leakages. And that actually achieves desired outcomes. So this is the second big change that I would highlight.